Hello guys, I want us to talk about your proof of funds for your Canada study permit application today. It is one thing that has been very difficult for most people when they want to apply for their study permit. So when we talk about the proof of funds, it is simply you providing documents and also explaining to the visa officer that is going to assess your application about how you are going to fund your education for 1 year in Canada. And if it's more than 1 year, you explain how you fund the remaining years. So let's get started. To begin your proof of funds, you need to look at the total expenses of the costs for your studies in Canada. And what makes up the total expenses are three things. The first thing is your 1 year tuition fees in Canada, your 1 year living expenses in Canada, and your flight ticket cost and in the miscellaneous. So I'm going to use some figures for example. So let's say your 1 year tuition fee is 15,000 Canadian dollars. For the living expenses, it's already a fixed amount for all provinces except Quebec. For all provinces, the living expenses is 20,635 Canadian dollars. Then when you come to the flight and miscellaneous, you have to budget depending on the cost of flight from your location to Canada. So let's say my miscellaneous and my flight cost ends up at, let's say, 5,000 Canadian dollars. So when I put all this together, that is 15,000 plus 5,000, that is 20,000, then plus 20,635. So let's round everything to, let's say, 41,000 Canadian dollars. So my total expenses for 1 year is 41,000 Canadian dollars. I have to prove that I have these funds available to finance my studies in Canada. Now, how do I do that? This is where you need the various documents to prove the source of these funds. The first document that I'll talk about today is the bank statement. I made a calculation which ended up in 41,000 Canadian dollars as my total expenses. So you need a bank statement to cover these total expenses. And the bank statement, according to the Canadian government website, should be at least 4 months so that they'll be able to assess the transaction histories. So 4-month bank statement, according to the information on their website. But in recent times, some people have been denied for using 4-month bank statement. And we've got to notice this through the GCMS note. So it's advisable to use either 5 months or a 6-month bank statement. And the bank statement, try and use a bank statement which is up to date so that it'll speak about the financial position or situation of that person. For example, don't print a bank statement, let's say, from last year, November, till this year, March, and we are in July, and the last transaction is in March, and you are using it. Most visa officers will deny your application because they will say the bank statement doesn't reflect the true financial standing of you, the applicant, or the person who is sponsoring you. And the bank statement, it can be from you or it can be from a sponsor. Let's take note of that. So if you don't have the money in your bank account and you have any close relative or someone who is capable, you can use the person's bank statement to finance your education in Canada. And the amount in the bank statement must at least be more than your total expenses. So for example, when I did the calculation, the total expenses was around 41,000 Canadian dollars. So if you should get a bank statement which has, let's say, 50,000 Canadian dollars or more, it will help make your case better. So that is about the bank statement. And with the bank statement too, the transaction history count. Don't go and collect money from people and just dump into your account and say, okay, this is the bank statement that I'm using for my visa application. It is a total red flag for most visa officers when they see what we call lump sums in your account. And when there are lump sums in the bank statement, what you have to do is you have to ensure that you explain why those lump sums are there and back it with the necessary evidences. For example, if you are in business and those lump sums comes from business activities, let's say some payment from people who are owing you or from your client, you have to explain and add evidences of those said payments so that they won't tag that money as just for show or for demonstration purposes. The second thing we have to look at is how to prove the source of the money. So let's talk about proving the source of the funds in either your personal bank statement or your sponsor's bank statement. Proving the source of the funds is one vital thing that most applicants miss in their application and they end up getting denied. To prove the source of your funds is very simple. The money in your bank account or your sponsor's bank account, where is that money coming from? If the money is coming from a business activity, it simply means that you or your sponsor is a business person. And every legal business has what we call business registration document, both the certificate and the Form A, which shows the ownership, that is the name and details of the business. So that is one document that you can use to prove the source of the funds. If the funds in the account is from, let's say, your employment, you are a salaried worker or you are being paid based on commission, depending on the work you do, and the money is coming from that source, you only need what? Your employment documents, your pay stubs, 3 months or 4 months, and any promotion letters, if there is any. So these are ways by which we can prove the source of the funds in the account. If, let's say, the money is coming from an investment, surely you would have an investment certificate and other documents to prove that, oh, this money in my bank account, it came from an investment that I did some years ago or some months ago. So please, before you submit the application, remember to prove the source of the funds, where the money is coming from is very, very important. Let's take note of that. If you are using a business certificate to prove the source of your funds, it's very important to add some additional documents to prove that this business is still running and also you are paying your taxes as required. So you have to also get what we call a tax clearance certificate showing your tax payment for the business. You have to also demonstrate through receipts, through invoices, through pictures that the business activity is running. It is not just a stagnant business. Any other document that you can add to prove that the business is running, the business is active, please do. That is if you are using a business certificate to prove the source of the funds. Let's continue. Another document that you will need is what we call a letter of sponsorship. That is if you are using a sponsor. If you are sponsoring yourself, you don't need to write a letter of sponsorship for yourself. But if you are using a sponsor, you will need a letter of sponsorship. So a sponsor can be your father, it can be your mother, it can be your siblings, it can be an uncle, an auntie, and even sometimes it can be a friend. It all depends on how you prove your case. So the letter of sponsorship is just something simple. So the letter of sponsorship is written by whoever is sponsoring you, and every important information that you feel or your sponsor feel he or she has to capture on the sponsorship letter has to be captured. And this sponsorship letter has to be signed. After it's written and signed, your sponsor has to provide a government issued ID which has his or her signature on it, and that signature must tally with the one on the sponsorship letter. The reason why visa officers demand for this is they want to know if truly the letter is coming from your sponsor, it's not coming from someone else. There have been cases where genuinely the sponsorship letters were from sponsors, but because the government issued IDs with signatures were not added, people got the application denied. So let's take note of that. Another document that you will need is what we call an affidavit of support. An affidavit of support is just a legal document binding the sponsor that, look, I have pledged to take care of the expenses of this person and I am binded by this, and I will ensure that when he or she gets to Canada, I'll provide these funds to ensure that he or she can have a smoothless education. But if, let's say, your father, your mother, or your brother or sister is sponsoring you, you don't really need an affidavit of support. but you can choose to add it. But if it's like, let's say, an uncle, an auntie, a nephew, a cousin, a friend, aside the sponsorship letter, you need an affidavit of support as well. So let's take note of that. Another thing that people miss out is proof of relationship. Proof of relationship. Whoever is sponsoring you, the visa officer wants to know how you are related to the person. So, for example, if it's your parent, one way that you can prove relationship with them is using your birth certificate and your parents' birth certificate. The visa officer will be able to see that, oh, truly, this person is your father or this person is your mother through comparing your birth certificate and your parents' birth certificate. Same way, if the person is not your father or your mother, let's say an extended family member, you still have to find ways and means to prove relationship because it's very important. Most visa officers have noticed that people just take bank statements from random people and say, oh, this person is my uncle, this person is my auntie, and he will provide the funds for my education, only to come here and get stranded. So now they want you to also prove the relationship you have with that person. So whatever way you feel you can prove that relationship, you try your best and prove that. I know most people, or in some families, you don't use the same surnames. But even if you don't use the same surnames, there should still be ways, maybe old pictures, birth certificates, or any legal document which can prove that, oh, truly, we are related to this person. People also draw what we call the family tree to draw a connection between themselves and their sponsors. So before you use any sponsor, ensure that you get documents to prove your relationship with the person. Let's continue. If you have paid a tuition deposit, you ensure that you add the tuition deposit receipt as well as evidence that, oh, when I got admission, the school required that I paid, let's say, $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 as my tuition deposit. Another thing most visa officers look out for is proof of previous sponsorship or evidence of previous sponsorship. That is for those who are using the sponsors. They want to know if this uncle, this auntie, this nephew, this cousin, this friend has previously supported you or sponsored you in the past, and they want evidence of that. For example, maybe your sponsor has taken care of you in the past, has given you some monies, you add them as evidence. Maybe the sponsor has gifted you, let's say, a property, you add that document as evidence. Any form of support that the sponsor has supported you with, please do well to add the evidence for the visa officer to know that, oh, this is someone that I know for long and the person has been supporting me always. So the person is not just coming out of the blue or nowhere to support my education because they want to really know or see that kind of connection. Because if I've previously supported someone in the past or a sponsor has previously supported someone in the past, it will not be difficult for the person to support you now. So they want to see that. Again, they want to see what we call evidence of ongoing support or evidence of ongoing sponsorship. They want to see and know that currently your sponsor is supporting you. And one way you can do that is now most schools request for tuition deposits. Most schools, though I know there are few schools that don't request for tuition deposit. Before you pay that deposit, even if it's your own money, you can give it to the sponsor or you can let the sponsor pay from his or her account since you'll be using that bank statement for your application. You can let the sponsor pay from his account so that there'll be evidence that, okay, this is the ongoing sponsorship. Even when I wanted to pay my tuition deposit, it was my sponsor that gave me the money. It was my sponsor that supported me. So please try and demonstrate previous support or previous sponsorship and ongoing or current sponsorship. It's very, very important. But if you are sponsoring yourself, you don't need all of these things that I've mentioned. So let's take note of that as well. Also, if you are fully funded, let's say you're coming for a master's program or a PhD program, do you still need to add a bank statement? I advise that yes, add a bank statement. Unless that fully funded offer you've gotten includes your flight ticket covered and every expenses. But if your flight ticket is not covered, add a bank statement. Just that in this case, you wouldn't need any huge amount in your bank statement or the sponsor's bank statement, because you only need something small for your flight ticket and maybe some little expenses. So if your fully funded offer doesn't cover your flight ticket, please add a bank statement. Even I've seen cases where some people didn't add bank statement to their fully funded offers, though flight ticket was not covered, they got approved. Some others also got denied. So to play it safe, Canada immigration, a lot of things are changing day by day. You get a whole lot of information that we have changed this, we have changed that. So just play it safe. One last thing I would like to talk about before I sign out is a little update that I saw on their website concerning the proof of funds. In the upcoming month, they are increasing the proof of funds a little bit, not anything much. So in the upcoming month, let's check on that so that we use the new amount for the living expenses in case we are submitting our application during that particular month or during that particular period. Another update there is they are saying people who are coming for multiple year programs should at least pay their 1 year fees also. When you look at the information critically, they didn't say it's compulsory, because you can prove your funds using one of these ways. So if you're coming for multiple year programs and you can afford, you can go ahead and pay your 1 year tuition fees. By you paying the 1 year tuition fees doesn't mean that it is an automatic visa approval. You still have to meet other requirements that I spoke about earlier. In this video, I've touched on a lot of things. I might have omitted one information or the other, but what I'll tell you is any important information, any important document that you can include in your proof of funds, please do, to make a good case for yourself. Don't just watch this video and stick to what I've said here. Be creative and be innovative enough when you are preparing your proof of funds. Again, in my upcoming video, I'll also be recording on how to use Empower financing, that is Empower educational loan, to serve as a proof of funds for your visa application. Before I sign out, I'm just issuing a disclaimer that I am not a licensed immigration person. I've been through the process. I did everything all by myself and I got here. So I'm just sharing my knowledge to also help people back home to also come here by doing it themselves. Remember to subscribe, comment, like, and share this video. Keep on supporting the Delali network and see you another time. Bye-bye.